Back in 2019, the Infinity Saga came to an end with Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. And in honor of its 5-year anniversary, let's rank the entire Infinity Saga from Iron Man to Far From Home. Hey friends, welcome to the Disney Pastor. I'm your host Tim. I talk all things Disney, which includes the MCU. Question of the day is this: what is your favorite movie from the Infinity Saga? That's what we're going to be taking a look today. Nothing multiverse, nothing Disney Plus shows, none of that. Just the movies from 2008 to 2019. We're going to be ranking them from the worst to the best, and that is how it's going to go. Without further ado, let's dive on in. Coming in last place is Captain Marvel. Now, I don't absolutely hate this movie. In fact, I don't hate any of these movies for that matter. But something does have to come in last place, and for me, it is this movie. The reason for that is I feel like the script is lacking compared to some of the others in this series of movies that we know as the MCU. And to me, the character falls flat. It's a decent story. It's a decent time. I think Fury is the standout here. I'm also not a fan of how they kind of retcon the his eye scratch of just being like the cat scratching it. And the Skrulls to me aren't super interesting, especially, granted, this isn't pertain to the Infinity Saga, but we take a look at how they've been used, and it's been kind of lackluster for the Skrulls, which sucks because they're really cool in the comics. That being said, though, it's okay, but it's not great. Coming in at 22 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Neither this one or the original Ant-Man is trying to do anything gigantic. I had to do one, okay? I apologize. But that being said, it's a fun time. It's all right. For me, the weakest point here is the villain. The motivation is there. The execution, not so much. By either villain, whether it's Ghost or it is, of course, our lovely criminal friends, it just doesn't work for me personally. There is some pretty cool fun moments in this, and I do love the kind of look at what house arrest looks like for Scott Lang. That was pretty cool. But other than that, it's a decent time that, is full of some small antics. I'm sorry. I had to do another one. It was too tempting not to. Coming in at number 21 is Thor: The Dark World. There are actually points I actually kind of enjoy with this one. This one gets, I think, a really bad rap because, when you take a look at the rest of the MCU, it's like, oh yeah, there's this one. And yeah, there are flaws with this one. It has two different tones in it, which feels weird. The villain, while intimidating, feels very lackluster. And then on top of that, it also feels like this one is the most throwaway, specifically with the Infinity Stones, because the rest of them, they kind of play an importance and kind of make a little bit of sense. But this one with the Ether and the Reality Stone just feels kind of thrown away and thrown together. That being said, if there is any redeeming qualities of this movie, I love how we get to explore Asgard a little bit more. We didn't really get a ton of that in the first movie, so this one kind of rectifies it a little bit. And that for me, I enjoy because it's a really cool world. Come on, it's a golden castle. What's not to like? Breaking into the top 20 is Iron Man 2. There are a lot of thoughts I have on this one. It's fun, yes. Mark 5 and Mark 6 are cool suits, yes. Too many plot points? Also yes. Black Widow? Yes. Glad we got her introduced. But here's the thing is, like I mentioned, there's too many plot points. They're trying to put a lot of stuff together because they're like, oh yeah, we want to build to the Avengers, and so let's start doing that with this one. So you have that, and then you have Hammer Industries and your villain arc that goes on with Ivan Vanko, right? So you have that stuff, and then you have also Pepper and Tony's relationship, so you have that, and then you have War Machine a little bit, so you have that, and AIM with Justin Hammer and all that stuff, and then the government trying to seize the Iron Man suit, and then you also have, on top of all of that, Tony dealing with the possibility of him dying because his arc reactor is slowly killing him. Oh, and then there's also the Black Widow shield thing that happens. Have I explained it all to you there? yeah, in some ways it feels thrown together. It's still fun, still enjoyable. I have a good time with it. It's definitely the weakest of the Iron Man franchise. Coming in at number 19 is The Incredible Hulk. This one definitely feels different compared to the rest of the MCU. There's not a lot of comedy. It even feels different tonally, and even I'd argue a little bit of the script feels very different compared to the rest of the MCU. On top of that, you also have Edward Norton, who does a fantastic job as the Hulk, but he's not in any of the others because he didn't want to be. I don't remember the full story, but either way, this is his only time here. It's fun, it has moments. Granted, it's not saying much. It does better than the other Hulk movies, so there's that. There are some pretty cool moments in here. I think the CG is really good. I think they nailed the Hulk here, and just combination of just his rage. I think Edward Norton really is a standout here. As much as I enjoy Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, I think Edward Norton does a really good job here. Also, Emil Blonsky is pretty cool too, but his Abomination is... I just don't like it. I'll be honest. I'll shoot you straight. I don't care for it. Whether here or in any other projects, I'm not a big fan of it. Coming in at number 18 is, of course, Thor. There are parts I do like. I think the Shakespearean language is a little odd, especially because this is a Norse legend, not a English one, so why are you using Shakespearean language? Feels a little weird to me. That being said, I do like the idea of a fish out of water story. We see Thor's arc very clearly. It's done well. Hemsworth does a really good job. Tom Hiddleston is fantastic as Loki, and he's proven that throughout his entire time in the MCU. No questions about it. What I also do like in general too is that it feels, especially when you're in Asgard, right? You spend a lot of time on Earth, it feels very small, but when you go to like Asgard and spend time there, it feels very grand, right? Big stage, wide shots. I love that. It looks good. It makes it very unique for when you're stepping into another world, but it also can have some tonal problems that come with it. That being said though, it's a decent time, it's fun, and it's a pretty solid story. Coming in at number 17 is Ant-Man. This is a pretty fun, small-sized adventure. I promise I'm gonna try to avoid the ant puns. No promises. It's fun. It's not like it's trying to be anything super grand. I almost said gigantic. There we go. We're off to a really solid start here. But overall, it's a fun time. It's not trying to be anything big. It's just small, like an ant, and it fits well. It makes sense. The comedy's good. Paul Rudd's great. I love Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. I think it's great using Scott Lang rather than Hank. It just creates a very good kind of dynamic duo sort of thing that they both hate each other and love each other at the same time, and it's kind of nice. Michael Pena's also great as Luis. Great character. Yellow Jacket's a pretty solid villain, but that being said, it's fun, small, sized adventure. It's really hard not using ant puns, okay? I'm going to move on to the next one. Coming in at number 16 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Every time I watch this movie, I feel like I like it less and less, especially when you take a look at the bookends of the Spider-Man franchise as of right now. Granted, we're not talking about No Way Home in this, because that's part of the multiverse saga, but we are talking about Far From Home. There are things I do enjoy of this movie. I like the fact that we get Mysterio. I'll talk about what I don't like here in a second about it, but then we get some fun Spider-Man high school stuff, which we don't really see with the other Spider-Man movies too much. It's not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that's what it is. And it's a nice change of pace. I love just kind of the really prevalent teenage awkwardness that is a part of this movie. And also Homecoming as well. But this one, it's definitely prevalent because you're dealing with like relationships and crushes and all that sort of stuff. You know, normal high school teenage stuff. That being said, it's a fun time, but man, the villain twist at the end of like, oh, it's all an illusion. It doesn't sit well with me the more I think about it. I like Jake Gyllenhaal in this role. I think he did a really good job. I don't think I'm the biggest fan of the execution of it, especially because once again, it's another Tony Stark villain, which I know a lot of people have talked about, and it has its moments. In some cases, it's fine. I think here is where it pushes a little too far.
He renamed my life's work Barf.
You serious?
That being said though, it's fun, decent. It's a pretty solid time. And once again, Tom Holland does a great job. Oh, and also the illusions are cool. As much as I despise how Mysterio is really used rather than magic, it's more like theatrics and CG and stuff. I do really love the illusions. I think those are great scenes and definitely some of the standouts for this movie in particular. Coming into the top 15 is Iron Man 3. There are times when at least when I was younger, when I first saw this movie, that I really, really enjoyed it, and I still do. In fact, the first 2 acts of this movie, I think are really, really good. It's when you get to the 3rd act and the villain twist happens is where it kind of falls a little flat for me. I like the idea of the Mandarin. He's rectified in a later movie, which is great. But that being said, man, it's a tough twist to kind of swallow. And in a sense, it does play into some, I guess, a little bit of modern day stuff. But it's like, man, you were so close. So close. But again, the first 2 acts I think are really, really great here. I love the upgrades of technology. The other thing is too, is I have a soft spot for this movie because this was the first MCU movie I saw in theaters. I didn't watch the MCU till the Avengers at home via Redbox. For those of you who still remember what that was. That's how I got introduced to the MCU, and so this is the first one I saw in theaters. So there's a little soft spot for me in this one. It's a fun time, but yeah, that villain twist just doesn't help it. Coming in at number 14 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I've not been the biggest fan of this movie in the past, and then I rewatched it recently. I thought I hated it more than I actually did, and it was fun. I actually enjoyed it for the most part. I think it had some really solid moments. I think Ego's an okay villain, although Kurt Russell is a great casting choice. I also really enjoy Yondu's arc in this movie, and also Star-Lord's arc in this movie. There's a lot of really good arcs in this movie. Baby Groot's cute, fun, a lot of solid moments there. The song selection in this movie, also really, really good. Not the best in the franchise, but it is really, really good. That being said, it's a fun time. It's a solid entry into the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I think the reason I have it so high is I was more pleasantly surprised because I thought this would be a lot lower on the list. And it's not. Coming in number 13, making a pretty big leap here, is going to be Avengers Age of Ultron. I think this is a really underrated movie. Granted, I have it at 13 out of 23 of the Infinity Saga. So there is that. But I really do think it's underrated. I think a lot of people hate it because it isn't, the same quote-unquote quality as the rest of the Avengers movies. But I really think it's fun. I think Ultron is a great villain. And James Spader, I think, was a great casting choice. I love the use of Wanda and Pietro Maximoff as like these villains that turn into heroes. I think it works great. Scarlet Witch using her powers to really mess with the Avengers is a great sequence. Really, really good. Also love just the teamwork that is done through this movie. We get to see them work together as kind of this cohesive unit, which we don't see in the first Avengers movie because, well, that was their first time teaming up. But there is something fun about the Avengers being together in this sort of sense. And it's emotional at times. It's really great action. It's also, I think, really solid storytelling. If I have one thing I'm not the biggest fan of here, if there's one thing I'm not a big fan of here, it's probably the Bruce, Natasha thing going on. Not the biggest fan of it. I think it just doesn't work well here. And you're talking about 2 polar opposite characters that never, as far as I know, had anything in the comics, so it just feels weird, feels off. It doesn't really work for me. I'm glad they didn't really do much of anything with this afterward. But other than that, it's a fun time. Speaking of really enjoyed, number 12 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This really does, first and foremost, feel like a high school movie, which I mean is great because Spider-Man in general is more of a high school character. We don't see that in the Raimi trilogy or the Amazing Spider-Man movies. We don't really see too much high school. I mean, we get some good, pretty decent stuff, particularly with the Amazing Spider-Man, but this one I think just takes it up to another level. I think it's done really, really well. I like the Vulture as a villain. I think Michael Keaton nailed it and did a phenomenal job as the Vulture. There are some things where people may be like, oh, it's another Tony Stark villain. I actually think it works really well here. It's a fun movie. It's a fun time. I think Tom Holland really does a great job portraying the youthfulness that Spider-Man has. the desire to do more and learn some tough lessons along the way. And it's also cool to see Tony Stark in kind of a mentor-ish role here. I think it works pretty well. It's just fun overall. It's a really fun time. And coming in at number 11 is Captain America: The First Avenger. I love just the character arc. I love the origin story that we see. I think how it's set in World War II and just the setting of this movie, the tone of this movie is really, really good. I enjoy it a lot. I think it is really just almost a darn near perfect origin story. There are some things I'm not a huge fan of, but they don't take away from the movie in general. And at the same time, it's just fun. It's Captain America at his glory days, so to speak. And it does really, really well. If there is anything I would say I would love to see a little bit more of or done better, it would be the World War II battle sequences. They'd go through like a montage. I would have loved to see a little bit more of that rather than them just like, oh, we're going here and then here and then here and then here. I think spending a little more time in that would have been cool. But again, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. It's fun. Red Skull, really solid villain. Hugo Weaving did a fantastic job as the Red Skull. Overall, it's fun. We are officially in the top 10 with Black Panther. There's a lot to like about this movie. First and foremost, Killmonger is a great villain, and I mean, I don't think I need to say anything else. I think the character journey that we see for T'Challa, really, really good. The world of Wakanda that's established here is really great. The world building, the characterizations, the styles. It creates something that feels and is brand new, be it something that's like really cool and you're like, oh, I want to spend more and more time here. And that's just a testament to Ryan Coogler's direction. I think characters that are introduced here are really great as well. And it overall is just a really solid story, great action. CG is a little in some places, you know what I'm talking about, particularly with the final battle sequence. But this is just a fun movie overall, action-packed, emotionally packed, and it just delivers, I think, a really great gift anytime you watch it. Coming in number 9 is Iron Man, the first ever Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. This is another great origin story. It has a lot of great moments, great action. The sequences of Tony building his suits are great. Robert Downey Jr. absolutely nails it out of the park with this character and firmly cemented himself as one of the greatest comic book actors of all time with this role. I love how they take like kind of the comic bookiness of Iron Man's suit and bring it to life in such a way that makes it feel real, that makes it feel lived in. Villain wise, I think it's okay. I mean, it's pretty good. Casting Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, I think was solid. The Ten Rings is kind of a terrorist group given what the world was like in 2008. I think makes a lot of sense and plays very well, especially for the movie. The character journey that Tony Stark goes through, it's just really good. The world building here is solid, it's enjoyable, and it establishes the rest of the MCU that is to come. Coming in at number 8 is Doctor Strange, the mystical world that is bonkers. I don't know. There was a word I was looking for and I just completely lost it. That being said, I enjoy this movie. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Fantastic casting. Absolutely love it. I have no complaints. The CGI in this movie, also great. Also, can we just shout out Michael Giacchino for a quick second here? Because he did a fantastic job with this score. Oh my goodness. I love it. That being said, villain-wise, I think is definitely the weak spot of this movie. Don't get me wrong. I love Mads Mikkelsen. He's had some phenomenal villain roles, but this one definitely is his weakest, which sucks because I would love to see him in a few other roles in the MCU. That's something I would like to see. It is possible. There have been a few, but anyways, let's move on from that. I think casting, this has the most well-rounded cast of many of the MCU projects. It's a lot of newness, especially if you've like never read a Doctor Strange comic, like me over here. It feels like just a brand new world and we're discovering along with Doctor Strange, which is a really cool thing. We're like along with Strange discovering this whole new world, so to speak. I'm not gonna sing the song. We're not talking. No, I'm not doing it. Stop it. But it is really cool, and I just love how it's presented. We get some really great characters in this one as well, Wong being one of them. And yeah, it's a really cool world and universe that just, best way to describe it is mind-blowing. It really is. And it presents a whole new side of the MCU. To this point, we got the cosmic side. We have, all the Earth stuff, and now we have the mystic side of the MCU, and it's just introduced very well. Speaking of the cosmic side of the MCU, at number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Talk about a ragtag group coming together to save the world, and no one expected them to do so, both in the movie and also just in general too. Feige took a massive risk with bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy to life, and he got James Gunn to do it. I still don't know how this movie is as fun as it is. You've got a talking tree, a talking raccoon, and Chris Pratt from Parks and Rec, and it somehow works here. But this movie is so much fun. It has a lot of great humor, great action. It also has an emotional center to it as well that I think really catches you off guard. It's unexpected. It's a weird movie to have in the MCU, yet it fits so well, and it makes just the universe expand in so many ways. It is done just so well. I absolutely love this movie. It is a blast. It is enjoyable. It's one when I rewatch it, which isn't often as I would like to, but when I do, I have a blast. It's fantastic. It is just so much fun. Coming in at number 6 is Captain America Civil War. Oh my goodness, this movie is insane. You're taking a comic book that is absolutely crazy and massive in scope, and while you don't have the same scope as the comic book, it feels large, it feels grand, the stakes are high, it's personal as well, just with Steve Rogers' motivations, Iron Man's motivations. It's just done so well. The action's great. We get introduced to Black Panther and Spider-Man in this movie, and both them are fantastic, super fun to watch in this movie, and it makes you look forward to their, upcoming solo project. At the same time, it really feels like action-packed, non-stop, on the edge of your seat the entire time. And it's a really fun watch. And looking at just the rest of the MCU after this movie, man, was it never the same. But I really think this movie started as kind of the launching point that the MCU to that point was really, really great. But I think this just dialed it to 11. Coming into the top 5 is Thor Ragnarok. What a redemption for the Thor franchise. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the Thor franchise for the most part. It's safe to say that this one is easily the standout by far. It's a buddy cop movie with Hulk. Didn't think it would work. Well, I mean, some people didn't. I thought it would be fun, and it absolutely was. It's wacky, crazy, hilarious at really solid moments. This, to me, is a really fun movie. If there is any sort of detriment, is it leans a little too much in the humor when it should lean into some emotional moments, but it also does have some emotional moments. Hela is also a really great villain, played by Cate Blanchett. She does a phenomenal job. It's really, really solid. And I think Chris Hemsworth, this was just him coming alive as Thor, and it worked so well, and it propelled him, this movie in particular, propelled him to be what he is in Avengers Infinity War, which I would say was the best version of Thor we've ever seen in the MCU. Coming in at number 4 is the original Avengers, coming out in 2012. This one is the culmination of the entirety of Phase 1. And it's honestly really fun. It's enjoyable. It's a movie I think that is kind of unexpected, just the result. I mean, you want these characters to team up, but it's just done so well, where you have tensions, but then the coming together. Loki's a great villain here. The music is great. Alan Silvestri composing the Avengers theme. Script-wise is done very well. And why these heroes are brought together, the whole story, it's just great. It's fun. Literally, because of my friends saying how good this movie was, I ended up watching it. And so, I mean, that's the whole reason I'm a Marvel fan now. It's because of my friends telling me, hey, this movie's good, you should go check it out. Oh yeah, maybe I will. I'll check it out. Oh my goodness, this thing is amazing. And what a movie. Coming in at number 3 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. From the moment that this movie started and Cap takes out most of the on-deck crew, we knew something was different. I loved Captain America. I thought First Avengers great, and him in Avengers also really, really cool. This propelled him to such another level. And part of that is script, part of that is directors with Joe and Anthony Russo. They took Cap to another level, and I thank them so much for it. Also being said with that, I think it's just action is great. There's suspense, there's thrill, there's an intensity to this movie. It feels, while gigantic, very grounded, and it's so much fun. We get introduced to Falcon. We have Cap team up with Black Widow in this one. It's just a absolutely fantastic movie. Coming in at number 2 is Avengers Endgame, the culmination of 11 years of Marvel movies is here. It's this one, and the payoff is there. The emotion is there. The storytelling is there. The third act is one of the greatest third acts I've ever seen in any movie ever. There are a lot of great action, a lot of great adventure, some great emotional moments, some great callbacks and tie-ins and payoffs, and man, it is an absolute joy to watch. It's a long 3 hours, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like 3 hours. It is absolutely fantastic. I love this movie. But coming in at number 1 is Avengers Infinity War, the first half of the culmination of 11, at that point, 10 years worth of the MCU. There's a lot of great character moments in this one. We see just the tie-ins of all these different characters coming together to face this one big threat, which is Thanos, one of the best villains in the MCU, and I'd say one of the best villains in movie history. He's great, menacing. Josh Brolin does a phenomenal job. We see all these characters come together in some interesting combinations. Never what I thought of Iron Man and Doctor Strange being together for most of the movie, but here we are. From the moment you step into this movie, you sit down to watch it. I mean, the sense of dread at the beginning really sets the tone for the rest of the movie. The stakes are high, and they've never been higher. And it just creates just this sort of just intensity that is throughout this entire movie. There is a lot, again, like I said, great action, great moments, and the cliffhanger at the end with the snap, and you have just this sort of moment of the heroes lost. It creates something unique, something that's not done too much, and so because of that, it sets this movie apart, not just from the MCU, but I think just in a lot of movies in general. So that's it. That is all 23 movies in the Infinity Saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there has been so much more to that since then, and so much more that will be a part of it in the future. But man, the Infinity Saga is something that's hard to beat, and it is just really, really great, enjoyable, has a lot of great moments. I look back on it fondly. That being said though, let me know your thoughts on the MCU down in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Let's chat about it down there. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. It helps me know what you like, what you don't like. And if you're new around here, I want to say a special welcome to you. Be sure to subscribe down below and hit the bell to be notified for more videos just like this one. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.